Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office show. Oh, man, the playoffs are in full swing. There's so much incredible stuff happening around the NBA, so much to talk about. And Keith, I know today, this morning, been kind of a rough morning for you on social media, just everything's been going on. And so let me give you a little pick me up here. Um, so before we dive into all of our topics, last night, for the first time ever, I had a caller come in to our call-in show, and it was my dad. And
Ah,
the first time that I've ever had, and my dad is just like with you, just Celtics fandom is a generational thing for you. Lakers fandom is a generational thing for me. It was the first time ever that I had my dad in the 8+ years now that I've been doing this actually come on the show and talk. And it wasn't planned or anything like that. I was on the show live, and then next thing I know, there his name popped up as somebody trying to call into the show, and I clicked him in, and he chatted with Sean Davis and I for a few minutes, and then we moved on with the show. But it was a cool moment for me to get to have my dad on the show to talk Lakers basketball.
that is very, very cool, man. That's awesome. Don't look for my dad to pop up here anytime soon. He would not. He's not suitable for TV. He doesn't. We would lose our clean rating 100%. Was on the show. I let a naughty word slip last show. I think it
That's
was,
right.
and that we'll try to keep that from happening again. And I'll save those for you before and after recording. But yeah, my dad wouldn't make it through. So you guys will have to settle for the dogs when they want to make
I'll
an
have to
appearance.
maybe
Well,
I'll
that's
install
awesome,
a
man. I'm
bleep
psyched.
button or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you may have to.
But anyway, it was a cool moment, and just one of those things that I think I'll remember, that hey, yeah, my dad got to come on the show at some point, so it was a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Really, really cool.
Anyway, so there's a positive before we get into, unfortunately, a negative story to start off the show. Uh, uh, Torn meniscus. Um, this I don't know exactly what the recovery timeline is. We and I were just talking before we went on the air though about this. Maybe this bleeds into next season. Kawhi Leonard's body just doesn't seem to want to play professional basketball right now, and that's unfortunate. Obviously, the Clippers were eliminated last night by the Phoenix Suns 4-1 series, and you can only imagine what series we might have gotten had both sides been fully healthy.
Yeah, I had both teams had their guys. I think we might be looking at one right now. I think right Kings Warriors. I think we're all probably in agreement has been the best first round
Yeah.
series. It might have been this one because these would have been two teams just filled with star power going back and forth. And yeah, it's just a bummer that we didn't get it right, and we're not gonna. And it's funny. I made a promise to myself, and then I repeated this on a couple radio spots yesterday. But even before the game was played, because even if they had won, I felt confident Phoenix was going to win the series. And what I said was, I will not buy into picking the Clippers to be a finals team next season. I don't care what they do. I'm just not going to do it. I mean, now barring them getting a whole bunch of veteran dudes on the minimum, like, building a 15-man super team. But that feels almost like the only way they could get there because they just can't stay healthy. And that's the killer part. Now, the injury part of this, torn meniscus are weird, right? Sometimes guys are back in a matter of weeks. Sometimes they're back in months. It can take a long time, for these things. And given Kawhi's history and knowing how they've been so careful with him, my guess is we're probably going to see him pretty limited to start next season, and then we'll see what that looks like for the Clippers as they go. Paul George, I imagine, will be full go at the beginning of next year, so we'll see. The last thing I want to say on this one too is Clippers got to stop messing around with these injuries. You knew this was it. You knew he was out. Some people are saying it's gamesmanship and all these kind of things. It's just you got to be transparent. I don't even
That
care about the
yes,
gambling aspect of it, but you got to be transparent with the injuries. You owe it to the fans because the other thing is we didn't do it here because it's not how we do business. But Kawhi got killed on social media, on many of the talking head shows. There were written pieces of he just doesn't care enough, he doesn't want to play, and all these things. Well, the dude had a legit torn meniscus. Like, no one's playing through that. Of course, he was going to be out. You did your player wrong here with this, and I get it. Kawhi, he probably never saw it because I don't think he does anything on social media or anything like that. But it's just, yeah, it's just wrong. You just can't keep doing it this way.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that was one of the talking points I wanted to get into around this. And I also want to, don't let me leave this topic without talking about what this means for the Clippers. There's a lot of chatter out there about, does Steve Ballmer continue to tolerate this, or do they make a
Sure.
big move this summer? So we need to get into that. But how problematic is this? And look, I really enjoy that the NBA is not the NHL, it's not the NFL, where an injury report, it's not soccer, where an injury report is player sustained a lower body injury, right? And that's the injury report. Or literally out of MLS and soccer in general, you'll get the player picked up a knock in training. The hell is a knock?
Yeah.
You got to give us something a little more specific than that. But the NBA in general is pretty transparent. Hey, this player, De'Aaron Fox, has an avulsion fracture. He's going to try to play through it and all of this, right? This is now twice that this has happened with the Clippers, where they play the game where Kawhi Leonard is hurt. They know he's done, and they act like he might come back and play, trying to get a competitive advantage. Now, we also saw, this is not necessarily out of the ordinary in terms of, like, we saw the Grizzlies, right? Didn't want to reveal anything about whether or not Ja Morant was playing until they had to, right before game time. But this isn't like a, hey, this guy's hurt, but it's not an injury, it's going to keep him out forever. This is a, hey, this guy's out. He's not coming back. We know he's not coming back, and we're going to pretend like the injury is something else and just not reveal what it is. How problematic is that? And I hadn't thought of it from the player's perspective of Kawhi gets destroyed for a week in the press, and then it turns out that he's really hurt. Is this, I mean, the gambling perspective is part of it, but is this something the NBA needs to address?
I think so. And I personally don't necessarily really care about the gambling aspect of it. If we really got deep into it, I tend to think so few people can do that responsibly that I worry about, that getting more and more tied into sports and just in our culture in general. But that's a whole other, topic of conversation. But the reality is the league has tied itself to gambling quite a bit, much like the NFL has as well, right? They're now actively promoting I don't know if there is a single commercial break during the playoffs where you don't get an ad for FanDuel or DraftKings or somebody, right? So what I think here with this is that's going to be what will ultimately tip this is like something's going to happen where somebody's going to be like, well, wait a minute, this caused a huge problem with one of their core partners. That's when it'll change. But it'll change if that's what it takes for it to change. I'm okay with that because then it changes for the better. It allows us to do our jobs better because we would have spent less time knowing like that series is over. Like he's not coming back. It doesn't matter. What happens, here in the next game or so, like it's over. They're done. I also find it very weird. They were very open about Paul George. Like they left it open right up until the start. And then they're like, yeah, he's not going to play like in this series. Like he's out, for the first round. And maybe if we advance, we'll readdress them. Why they've done this twice now with Kawhi, and maybe it's because they know he's doesn't care, right? Not doesn't care about playing. I want to be very, very
doesn't care about the
doesn't
backlash.
care about if they share his injury status or not. Sure. That's where I think it's I think it's maybe that's why they feel like they can do it, but yeah, it's not a good look for sure. You want to move to what does this mean for
yes, yeah. Let's talk about what this means for the Clippers because, like I said, that the conversation is growing. Of this is 4 years now. I saw somebody put the stat out there. I wish I could credit them, but that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have appeared together in 40% of the Clippers games in 4 years.
Do you want to hear the other like crazy one?
Yeah.
Then I got this from Zach Lowe's podcast. I think it was Zach who said it. it was from the time the Nets built their super team to the Clippers building their super team, they have a combined something at that time. It was like 4 or 5 playoff wins.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
nuts,
crazy.
right?
So if you're Steve Ballmer and money grows on trees, right? Maybe it's less of a concern than it would be for a different ownership group here.
Sure.
But money's no problem for him. So maybe he's more tolerant of this than another team would be, but nonetheless, your return here can't be great. You can't be feeling good about what you've got here in four years now, and you don't have a lot to show for it. But I think complicating this situation is while people say maybe it's time to make some drastic changes, you're also opening a new arena. And
Yep.
do you want to open that arena in the middle of a teardown? Probably not. So what do you do if you're the Clippers this summer?
I think you just have to run it back and hope for the best, right? And hope for the best unless a trade comes its way that gets you out of this, which is highly unlikely because I don't know how anyone could trade for Kawhi or PG right now. You're probably just gotta hope for the best, and maybe you catch lightning in a bottle. They're healthy when it means when they need to be, and off they can go. I'm gonna throw a question at you, so don't go look at their salary sheet.
Okay.
How much guaranteed money? And for our purposes, I'm going to give you a little hint. We're going to count Eric Gordon's 20 million or so as guaranteed money because I think he's going to be back. How much guaranteed money do you think they have on their books for next season? Give you another small hint. They only have 2 free agents, Mason Plumlee and Russell Westbrook. The other 13 guys are all under contract.
190 million.
You're pretty close. 198.2 million in guaranteed.
That's pretty close.
Salary.
I was going between 190 and 200. I'm like, I know it's up there because it's
you're
like
right on it, man.
It's crazy. Like you're over the cap guarantee. You're into the tax guaranteed.
You're into the super tax. You're
into the super tax guaranteed.
Yep.
And do we know for sure if that super tax is kicking in this summer?
Oh, parts
I think
of
it's a 2-year phase in, right?
Yeah, parts of it. Yeah, there's a phase in coming. Parts of it are like they will not have access to the taxpayer mid level. That seems like that is coming like this coming season. Some of the further penalties like the draft pick stuff and some of those other things, that's probably going to be the next year, like after this coming season. But the taxpayer mid level, I believe, and we'll do a show when things slow down a little bit. And now that we're getting close to the first round wrapping up, maybe if teams can close out series like you're supposed to at home in 5 games, and didn't happen. Stupid Celtics. If we move on, we'll do a show where we really break down the CBA stuff in detail. We'll get into all of it because there's a lot with that, but they're going to be up into that super tax realm. I'm just going to throw numbers at you now. Like this is what's on the books. Paul George and Kawhi matching identical contracts, $45.6 million each. The next highest salary, Gordon, which I think you just guarantee it and keep him because at this point it's only money, right? And you can't replace him even if he is slowing down. $20.9 million, $18 million for Norm Powell, $17 million for Marcus Morris Sr. Then you get into the more mid-range contracts. Nick Batum, $11.7 million. Robert Covington, $11.7 million. Terrence Mann, $10.6 million because he's got that extension that bumps him up. Ivica Zubac, $10.9 million. None of those contracts, minus Gordon, probably Morris, are truly bad contracts.
Right. That's what I was thinking as you're reading through that. I'm like, there's 1 or 2 of those that's actually a bad kind of, but most of those aren't terrible. It's just the accumulation.
That's exactly it. It's that once you pile up, 8 guys making between 11 and 20 million, and then you throw on top of it the dudes who make 45 million, the couple guys there, that's how you end up with a $200 million payroll. And that's before, I'm guessing they're going to do what they can to bring Mason Plumlee back because he was really effective for them, played really well, and was a good backup for Zubac. And they're probably going to try to bring Russ back. Problem is, I don't know what they're going to bring Russ back. Yeah, because as much as we've kind of, said, like, he's not the guy he was. I don't know that he's a minimum player next year, and I don't know that they're going to have
Right.
anything else to offer him.
He was good for them. If you look at his stats, I was looking at this last night. They're actually very similar to what he did with the Lakers, but the difference was his shooting was much more efficient. And I'd have to dig
Yeah,
deeper to see, is that the Clippers have a much better shooting team than the Lakers did that created more space for him, or is
yeah.
that just he happened to shoot very well for
I
a
think it's
20
more the
game
latter.
stretch? You
Yeah,
think it's the latter there? He just
I
happened to
think
shoot
so.
well.
I think there's some noise in his Lakers numbers when he played without LeBron and AD or played with only one of them, because I think he took a lot of not great shots because who else was going to take those
Sure.
shots? And he's not Durant or LeBron, who are, two of the all-time good good bad shot makers, right? Like they could take contested light clock jumpers and knock them down all the time. He's not going to really do that
Yeah.
that often. So my guess is if we really dug in, we'd find that's where some of that noise is. But yeah, but I think we're both in agreement. He's not a minimum player at the
No.
very least. He's a tax mid-level guy at the bare minimum, and I think probably more than that.
Yeah. And that's so if the taxpayer mid level does not exist for this Clippers team, what do you and I think actually for Russ, his best option might be to stay with the Clippers, just if we set
Good.
aside the money,
Yeah,
particularly because
I
he would
agree.
get to stay in LA, and I think that he's found a bit of a fit there and everything. But I don't see how they pay him. So I know this is kind of turning into a Clippers postmortem here,
Sure.
but what do you? I don't know what that's going
So
to
what
look
I would
like.
do if they, hired me tomorrow to run the team,
Yeah,
I would find one of the cap space teams. And I know it sucks to be out even more picks as you're finally starting to get into them, but I'd see if I could move on from a like Robert Covington, like one of
Marcus
those
Morris.
guys, just get that salary off my books, get me under the super tax line enough to give me the taxpayer MLE, and I'd re-sign Russ, because otherwise you're filling the point guard spot with a player on a veteran minimum because that's all you'll have, and they're not going to be as good as Russell Westbrook. Like
Yeah.
that's just the reality. You're now looking at the Ish Smith, Reggie Jackson, Corey Joseph type guys, and that's not good enough to start. And if you're not going to be confident that you can have Kawhi and PG on the floor, who's going to initiate your offense? Right? Someone still has to get the ball up the floor and get you into your stuff. At the bare minimum, Russ can do that, and he can do a whole lot more. And I fully say that, recognizing if he tries to do even more than that, it can be damaging. Like I get
Hmm.
that part of it, but yeah, it's really really tough. And now this is exactly what the NBA wants in the new CBA, right? They want you to be forced into, hey, you can't just spend your way out of every decision. You cannot just continue to do this. Another likely option is they pile a couple of those salaries together and go try to trade for a player who can fill that point guard spot, that on ball spot, and just try to make it work that way. So maybe that's what we ultimately see.
Hmm.
But yeah, this is tough, man. They have their work cut out for them this summer.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things go about. I mean, obviously, these new CBA rules are going to make things very tricky, and they're supposed to. I mean, the Clippers
Yep.
and the Warriors are the two teams that are very clearly in the crosshairs here with the new rules for the NBA, and how they navigate this is
Yeah.
going to be
Same
interesting
thing
this
for like
summer.
Dante DiVincenzo on the Warriors, except
Yeah.
at least they have the little bump of they have his early bird rights, so they can offer him that on top of it because he's already on the roster. So not saying that will be enough for him, but at least you have that. Having or not early bird, they have his non-bird rights, but having non-bird rights on a minimum guy does you nothing. Does you no good. So
I I need to ask you this too, and I may wind up cutting one of our other a couple of other topics that we can save for tomorrow because I've been wanting to talk about this too. I think it was John Hollinger who went through some of the things that would no longer have been possible had this season been played under the new season's NBA rules in terms of trades and the whole situation with being able to teams who are into the super tax, as we're calling it, not being allowed to sign players off of the buyout market. So, like the entire Russell Westbrook trade situation would not have been, none of it would have been possible. Um,
yeah, yeah, a
is
lot,
there
yeah, definitely,
we
yeah.
talk a lot about unintended consequences from changes. And when I look at how many trades have happened in the last year that could not happen under the new rules that are coming, I wonder, could an unintended consequence of these new rules that are coming in the new CBA be taking away from the trade market, limiting the trade market further, which I think it's part of the reason why the NBA is so popular is because the off-season trade chatter and even in-season trade chatter is such a thriving marketplace and topic of discussion. Could the NBA be going too far and actually shooting themselves in the foot a little bit if teams are now going to find the trade market too restrictive, or will teams go the other way and say, "Hey, we've got these new restrictions, but we're going to be creative by doing this, this, and this, and we're going to find our way around it."
Initially, it'll be the first one, but it'll very rapidly turn to the second. This will separate the really smart teams from the not smart teams, and we'll see that very quickly. There will be moves made that will be done around the idea of, hey, we just gotta get moving on this quicker. We got to get ahead of it with some of these things. And that list of stuff that couldn't have happened, the KD trade to Phoenix would not have been one of them. Malcolm Brogdon to the Celtics likely would not have been allowed. I mean, we're not going to spend a bunch of time going through all of them, but basically most of the big trades for the teams that are way over the tax would not have happened. Jay Crowder to the Bucks wouldn't have been a thing. Deal with that. So here's what I think is going to happen. So this will phase in over the next couple of years, as all these things will. But let's say it's a guy like I'm trying to think of a good example here, but I gotta find a good one who's let's say it's Mason Plumlee. Okay. Mason Plumlee's full bird rights on him. He makes $9 million this year. Clippers, because the bird right stuff doesn't change. They could sign him to whatever they wanted to this summer. Okay. What if the Clippers say, hey, we're so screwed with these penalties? Let's say we all agree Mason Plumlee is what, a $12 million player now in the new world of the NBA, probably in that range, 10, 12 million. What if they say, hey, we got to make him a $20 million player? So then we have Mason Plumlee to use as salary matching in a trade because we can't add more than we send out. So what we do is we overpay guys because we can, because we're the Clippers and we have the money. And then we use him as, yeah, we all know he's really a 10, 12 million, but now we can go get a 20 million player because we have him. That's the kind of stuff I think we're going to see happen, where it's going to be, let's give out bigger contracts to a handful of these guys, knowing essentially we're turning them into a walking trade exception. Like that's what we're trying to do, because I can't be stuck trying to match. Because remember, in the new world, it's going to be, you have to match dollar for dollar.
Right.
On the trades. It can't be I sent out 15 to take in 20. It's going to be I sent out 20 to take in 20. And I think that's how we may see some of the teams get there. There's only a small handful who can afford to do that, but I think we may see some of that.
So kind of similar to what the Orlando Magic did this last summer with Gary Harris, Mo Bamba, creating kind of like players who were, they had the second year non-guaranteed on their deals and all of that, and that made it so they didn't have the ability to block a trade, which that's going away too. But
yeah, well, I mean that's already kind of sort of not. There's a lot of stuff that's changing with the no trade and the bird and all that stuff if they lose them and everything with that. But yeah, I think this is one where we're gonna definitely see teams will get very creative and some will be like, man, that's a crappy way to treat a player. Well, yeah, until that paycheck cashes as a $20 million player on the first and 15th every month. Like then you're like, okay, worked out okay for me, right? Like I'm good. This is fine. So that's where I don't like treating players truly as just trade chess pieces, but I think you have the ability here. The smart teams will get super creative on how they do some of this stuff.
And I think there's a difference too if it's upfront. You know what I mean? Like it's one thing if you're selling Blake Griffin on you're going to go down for as our franchise player in history, your jersey is going to be up in the rafters and all of this kind of stuff. And then, oops, we're trading you 4 months later compared to, hey, we're signing this deal. Everybody's on the up and up. Your agent knows, there's there's a decent chance that we trade you on this contract, but you're going to be getting this much money out of it. When it's more upfront like that, I don't have as much of an issue.
Completely agree. Yeah, you're everybody gets
what you're getting into.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of one of those things where, hey, you know what you signed up for,
Yeah,
right? It's
exactly.
you're there. So yeah, it's going to be fun to monitor how teams figure this out. Like I said, the smart teams will figure it out faster than everybody else will.
All right. So Keith, our first topic for the day, it almost took us through an entire show, but it did it just kind of naturally branched into a lot of
And
different elements we
now
had to
let
cover.
that serve as the Clippers offseason preview.
There you
Look,
go.
there's number one in the books. We're done.
Check that one off the list. Okay. So this will be much quicker. Otto Porter Jr. Picked up his option. Not a surprise. That was expected.
Coming
Who
off
his
a
coach will
completely
be?
lost season. Yeah.
Yeah, who his
What's
coach
that?
will be, we don't know. But
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
this
do not
we
know
knew
that
he
yet.
was going to pick this up.
Yeah.
Lost season, out due to injury the whole time. So hopefully he gets back and can be healthy. But I mean, now this is the kind of news that's going to start popping up, though,
Yep.
that some of these decisions are going to be made. Some of them might wait until the last minute to make decisions on them. Teams are going to have to make some decisions as well.
Mhm.
But this was a no-brainer.
Here's the good news for the Raptors and Raptors fans, if want to go that direction. He is now trade eligible at the draft. He would not have been trade eligible at the draft had he not done this, because you cannot trade a pending free agent, which he would be until that option decision was made. Now that that option has been picked up, that's $6.3 million of salary matching that the Raptors could use in a draft day trade. I'm not saying I expect them to do that, but they can. And they wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And it just gives you a little more clarity going in, even if you expect it. And like for me, that's what I projected. So I didn't have to change anything with their outlook or anything like that. But it's always good to have that clarity, and you're getting it 2 months almost ahead of when he had to do this. Cause I think I reported on this, but I think his date was June 20th, if I remember correctly.
I mean, you knew what he was going to do. So,
Sure.
and at least now you've got the certainty there.
Just because
We
some
should.
people, sorry, just because some
Go
people
ahead.
do ask, the two earliest option dates that like we know of that's out there. And you can see all these are all on Spot Track. If anybody's ever interested, you can check all this stuff out. Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. June 15th. So still, roughly a month and a half away. Those are the two guys who have the two earliest option dates that are out there. So we're probably not going to see a ton more of these over the next month even, because generally guys do it very close. But in this case, no brainer. Let's just get it done. Let's all move forward.
All right. We do have a couple of award winners.
Yeah.
Lauri Markkanen gets Most Improved Player, and Paolo Banchero gets Rookie of the Year. I don't think there's a big surprise on either one that they got these awards, and I think both guys are very deserving. Paolo Banchero, I think, was indeed the best rookie in the season, and Lauri Markkanen, man, I mean, he was fantastic, especially in the early going when the Jazz were surprising everybody, and I think they were the 1 seed in the West at one point.
Yeah, at one point,
Obviously, that's not how their season ended up, but he had a tremendous season and certainly made those trades that the Jazz made this offseason look that much better. That hey, we got this guy that's fantastic. So yeah, I mean, both of these I'm good with.
This is what Lauri Markkanen did last year. So with the Cavs last year, and fully owning that he was in a less starring role, but 15 points per game. I'm rounding all of these. 15 points per game, 6 rebounds, shot 45, 36, 87 shooting splits. This year, 25.6 points per game, 8.6 rebounds. He barely missed a 50, 40, 90 season. Basically 49.9% from the field, 39% from three on 7.7 attempts per game, too. And then 87.5% from the free throw line on 6 free throw attempts per game in 66 games played, and was really just shut down at the end because the Jazz were going in a different direction, let's just say. Absolutely deserving of this award. A lot of other guys could have Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Some others could have been in there, but Markkanen had an outstanding season.
So when I look at these, I think, yep, Markkanen was fantastic, and it's part of the reason why I think Jazz fans should be optimistic about their future. Not just Markkanen, but the other things that all the draft picks they've got now to play with as well. But he was tremendous. Was it still the right? Like, do Cavs fans feel worse about the trade now? Like they feel like, oh man,
let's
we
talk
gave up.
after the playoff series.
Yeah, we'll see what
See how they
happens.
feel in a week or so.
See what
Yeah.
see how they feel there. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
No, I don't think so. I think you still feel pretty good, right? I mean, you still have Donovan Mitchell. Like,
sure.
I know it hasn't been a great run for him. Now, if Danny Ainge starts turning these draft picks into guys like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in Utah, then all of a sudden it's going to be like, what did we do?
Right.
Like, we traded Markkinen and, all these great players, like draft picks. Like, but I don't think the Cavs will be quite that bad and shouldn't fall quite that far. But I didn't think that about the Nets either. And then look at how that whole situation went.
You never know. And then Paolo Banchero getting Rookie of the Year again. That makes sense. I thought he was tremendous this season. And still, I don't think anybody. Maybe I hope it happens, but I don't think anybody's going to top the draft day swerve that Orlando pulled in taking him number one overall.
Awesome.
That was phenomenal stuff. But and then he proceeded to prove them right. Like, could you imagine if like Jabari Smith was the best rookie like by far this season? Could you like imagine just the feelings in Orlando would not be good because that was
right.
Oh, it's gonna be him, it's gonna be, and then suddenly it's Paolo Banchero. But nonetheless, Banchero was fantastic and is so far has proven the Magic right in their pick.
Yeah, 20 points per game, 7 rebounds, 3.7 assists. At one point, he was at some level, and maybe this finished it, where it was like him and LeBron for those numbers, like as rookies. So yeah, that's pretty good. I know his shooting efficiency was junk, but I mean, he played over half of the season with no guards. Like, and I'm not even exaggerating. Like, they had no guards for large chunks of this year in Orlando, where there was it was Banchero and Franz were literally playing the 1 and the 2. Franz Wagner, that is. Only Franz, as I like to call him. So it is like that's like you're not going to be super efficient if you're having to create everything. Now, maybe the assists will go down a little if he doesn't have the ball all the time and those kind of things. But, for the most part, yeah, I think we're in a spot where this is, very, very deserving. That's no slight on Jalen Williams, the wing Jalen Williams, who was awesome from Oklahoma City, and I think will be a great, great player. And Walker Kessler, who had a great year for the Jazz. Speaking of the Jazz again in trades, man, you get Walker Kessler, basically becomes like not defensive player of the year level Rudy Gobert, but pretty good. And you still have all those draft picks coming like that. Talk about we feel pretty good on that one.
Okay, so let me ask you this: forget the draft picks. Sure. If you are, let's say you're starting a team right now,
Walker Kessler, you don't even need to finish the question.
Okay,
yeah.
I was going to say Walker Kessler on his contract or Rudy Gobert on his contract. It's Walker Kessler, and then you get all those picks. Yeah, and then you got all the picks on top of that. That is unbelievable, unreal for Utah.
Yeah, it's not even close. I mean, he makes like 1/17th or 1/20th of what Gobert makes. Like that's done. Let's move, keep moving, and then and then you get everything else. Yeah, good times. I mean, I know he's not with my team anymore, and he was with the team you hate most in the world. But I think we all can say Danny Ainge is pretty good at this.
Oh yeah,
he's pretty good at tearing a team down and giving them everything they can to rebuild around.
Yeah, and you know what? Danny Ainge has become less of a swear word around Lakers fans since the trade dedeadline. For whatever reason. So yeah, there's that as well. But yeah, so I have no problem giving him his flowers for an amazing offseason for them and all the draft picks. And good Lord, who knows what they're going to do? Even I'm getting excited already for draft night because my gosh, I think there's going to be some fireworks.
Yeah, I think so too. I think anytime you have obviously whoever lands at number 1 is I turned my phone off. I deleted my number. I canceled my subscription plan because I am not taking a single phone call about trading number 1 because it's Victor Wembanyama and we're done. We're moving on. But I think everybody else is like, hey, let's talk. Let's have a conversation, right? Because it really does start to flatten out quite a bit after that.
All right, let's finish up with this. Ime Udoka to the Rockets. Winds up becoming their coach. We talked about this the other day about how sometimes these teams that are getting out ahead of it before a lot of teams are eliminated from the postseason, they're able to, if they find their guy, sign them and say and move forward. What do you think about this hire for Houston?
I think it's interesting, especially when you compare it to what they were rumored to be maybe doing with Nick Nurse. I think what this does is this gives you still the optionality if you're the Rockets. If you hired Nick Nurse, you're basically saying it's either James Harden or we're getting some other guys. We're pushing this forward. We're trying to win. Nick Nurse is just he's probably not coming into a rebuilding situation where he's growing a whole bunch of kids and making them work. Udoka, you can split the difference. You can say, hey, come in, bring discipline to our young roster that really desperately needs it. Let's try to build these kids up and go. Or you can pitch it to James Harden of, hey, we hired the dude who 2 years ago was coaching in the NBA finals. When it gets into the whole suspended, then ultimately, whether it was fired or just parted ways, however you want to look at it from the Celtics, that point of view with this, I'm a big believer in second chances. He didn't murder anybody. He didn't even commit a crime as far as we know and have been told. And Adam Silver came out and said when the NBA did their own investigation, there was nothing to block him from getting another job. He basically did something you can't do in an organization, and he got fired for it. Just like we see, it feels like every day, major businesses, this happens with somebody. It's not excusing the behavior at all. It's important. Should not have done what he did, but it doesn't mean you don't get a second chance. You get a second chance to prove you learned from it and that you're going to figure it out and go. So, good for him. The Rockets got a heck of a coach. They did well with this, and I think this signals it's all still open for them to do whatever they want to do, but they maybe are a little more content to let's keep growing with the kids if we need to moving forward.
Does this matter at all for the Celtics? I don't recall off the top of my head if they officially parted ways with him or if he's still under contract or what. How did that all resolve?
When the whole stuff came up with the Nets, the Celtics at that time, I can't remember if they officially released it. I don't know if it was or they said it, but it was basically they made it known. Hey, we're not gonna. If anybody wants to hire him, go ahead. We're not gonna hold you back from it. And I think the idea was then if he gets hired by the Nets, everybody just wipes their hands of the situation, and it's like we don't have any stuff. And then shortly after that, the Celtics. It was right before the All-Star break. They promoted Joe Mazzulla to the full-time, removed the interim tag, and it was announced then that they had parted ways with Ime Udoka. The suspension part was over, but they were it was done. He was no longer a part of the organization. No sense of he would be back either. So,
so no real ramifications there then. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to add one quick thing if I can. I'll make it very quick. Early entry candidate list came out. From the NBA, we talked about this the other day, just kind of dates to watch. That deadline was the 23rd to identify as an early entry candidate. 242 players, much like you and your salary cap guaranteed money prognostication ability. I was pretty right on in the middle. I said that they would have about somewhere between 200 and 300 players would declare as early entry candidates. So 242 players. What happens now is college players under NCAA rules have until 5 p.m. on Monday, June 12th to withdraw from the draft. All players, I'm sorry, that's all players is Monday, June 12th, 5 p.m. NCAA players are Wednesday, May 31st. So I mix those dates up. So Wednesday, May 31st for college players. So roughly a month from now, guys will be able to go through the draft combine, get a sense of where they really stand in the league and those kind of things. And then they can still withdraw and return to school. And that's why this number is so big now, because so many guys, they go through at least a little bit of the process, get a sense. Sometimes they get feedback from teams of hey, you really got to work on your off the dribble shooting, or you got to work on your strength, or ball handling, or your defense, or whatever it is. They get that feedback and then they go back to school and get to work on it. So, and there's some guys who are on here very clearly because they've already, a handful of these guys have announced this is not only am I transferring, this is where I'm transferring to. It is now in a spot where, some of these guys, that's exactly what this process is for them. They're just coming out to see what it's like and gather some feedback and go from there. So that's really where we're at.
Right. And so that list is going to be chopped down significantly. And then, of course, only 60 players get drafted on
Yep.
draft day. So
Didn't know how many it is this year. It's only 58.
58 because
Yeah.
who was the lost picks again?
Chicago
That's
and
right.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Miami had already lost theirs. Chicago couldn't last year because they didn't have a pick. They're only losing theirs because they got the pick from Denver, if I remember correctly, through another deal. So they get the Denver pick, which they're forfeiting, and then Philadelphia is forfeiting their own pick, and then Philly will also forfeit next year's pick too because they were fined or punished by losing 2 draft picks. So
it's way too valuable to do it now, but part of me wants to go back to the days where there were like way more than 2 rounds of the NBA draft and
sure.
people were drafting like their friends and stuff like that.
Yeah. That used to happen in Major League Baseball all the time. It'd be
Yeah.
like, somebody would draft somebody, and every once in a while, that person would like turn into somebody. Like they'd be like, "Holy cow, they're actually okay." We're not going to get into it. We'll save it for tomorrow's show because I want to talk about Portland adding a G League franchise, and we'll spend time on that. I think there's a chance if the G League becomes what the NBA wants it to. First step, obviously, going to have 30 affiliated G League teams. I think there's a chance they may add a third round to the draft with a condition of third round players must spend X amount of games or days or whatever in the G League, because then it's the more players you can put in the G League that are affiliated to the NBA team, truly attached to that NBA team, the more interest we'd have in the G League, right? Because it's now look at it like I look at Jonathan Isaac when played. A ton of people watched the Lakeland Magic G League games because it was, hey, I want to see, Jonathan Isaac play. So that was obviously a unique injury recovery thing. But if you had a kid where it's like, man, I kind of liked that guy in the draft, and now he's spending the whole year in the G League, people will tune in and watch, on occasion with that. And that's how you beef it up a little bit. I think they'd like to be kind of what Major League Baseball is, where like everybody knows who their team's like top 2 or 3 prospects are. If you're a hardcore fan of that team, I think they'd like to be able to be like, hey, remember, we also got, Trevor Lane down in the G League, dropping 25 a game on folks. Junior high 3-point shootout champion.
So Keith, that brings me full circle. My dad on the show last night got asked to confirm by our live chat, got asked to confirm that I could actually shoot the basketball, that I was a shooter.
I love it.
And I just did a piece all about how Malik Beasley needed to lose his minutes for the Lakers, and that was the player my dad compared me to.
That's funny. So your dad said you have no place in the Lakers rotation as well.
He said I was very streaky as a shooter.
That is too funny. My dad's scouting report would be he could shoot, he could pass, as long as he didn't have to be on the move. And he's not entirely wrong. I was undersized and not a very great ball handler. I could really pass. I was kind of maybe it was subconsciously because he was one of my favorite players. I was like NBA Arvydas Sabonis, but like a foot and a half shorter because I was like very small. But I like to just stand still and like facilitate the offense and occasionally shoot it myself. Not occasionally. I like to shoot a lot. I was a little bit of a gunner
making it rain
back in the day. Yeah, I didn't turn very many down. Probably should have, and I maybe would have played more, but I did not.
The itchy trigger finger of Keith Smith out there on the floor.
Okay, you can't score if you don't shoot. And the name of the game is try to score points. So.
According to Michael Scott, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yep.
Right?
Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, Michael Jordan. I don't even remember how that goes.
Yeah,
funny.
All right. We're going off on a tangent here. So let's wrap things up there, but appreciate everybody for joining us. Make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office Show YouTube channel, turn on those notifications. Of course, go follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is you listen to podcasts. That's right. Put those reviews in. We sure do appreciate it. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.